Let's talk current events because oh, ho, 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 hard day today. Hard day today. And I titled this live session, "The Nationalists Are Gaslighting Everything All at Once." Uh, Understand that. Well, let me back up a step. After World War II, when General Eisenhower, switched to becoming a politician and running for president, one of the things Ike was really concerned about was what we did to Europe as far as psychological warfare goes. Okay. Ike was very, very, very concerned um, about two things. One, using wartime processes against non wartime civilian populations, and the industrial monster we created in World War II, the military industrial complex, um, that taking over our system of governance. Um, Understand right now that you are being subject to a state run, state directed psychological warfare campaign. Okay. What they are doing now, they're not using, Radio Free Europe, and they're not using, mailers or an operative, standing on a soapbox in the park. They're using Facebook. They're using Twitter. I still won't call it X. It's the dumbest fucking marketing rebrand of all time. They're using Facebook, True Social, Gab, Rumble. Okay. The stuff my friends have been sending me over text in messaging today about how, if you believe in the right wing to far right wing politicized mythology set, and it is a fixed set. There's a guideline. There's an arena they play in. If you believe in that set of mythologies they have built up to create their political arena, um, you don't believe it a little. You believe it a lot. And they're getting people to believe things in serial patterns. Okay. If you believe that George Soros is the enemy of planet Earth, by the way, they loved him when the Iron Curtain fell. Yeah, because whose money went into Eastern Europe to help rebuild and build the institutions that create democracies? That was George Soros. But if you believe George Soros is the Antichrist, you also believe that COVID was a plandemic, not a pandemic. Okay. Which makes no freaking sense. My buddy and I were talking about this over text earlier today during a break. Um, if they had the genetic engineering to plan a pandemic, the plandemic, as they call it in the far right Narnia circles, you're talking about $1 trillion product. If you can genetically engineer a virus to only attack certain people, because their conspiracy theory gets wild. Like, it wasn't it was designed not to infect Chinese or the Azadi Jews. What? Occam's razor that shit, you dumb motherfucker. If they had the genetic engineering capabilities to literally target or exclude targeting at a viral level, at an RNA DNA level, it would literally be $1 trillion product. But they took the $1 trillion product and only used it for creating a lockdown, killing 1.2 million people in the United States alone, and tanking the economy and destroying the supply chain. So people who love money, who aren't addicted to drugs per se as much as their portfolio, Okay, a lot of these guys are addicted to both greed and drugs. I know that, but they really love the money. Okay, and this was my complaint about American capitalism. I'm still a capitalist, but a lot of people don't know what money is actually used for. They don't know the purpose of the money. Okay, so you're telling me that these chowderheads created a $1 trillion genetic engineering product and only used it to hurt the economy and lock the economy down. That makes no goddamn sense. Why not make the $1 trillion with the invention? No, it was all a black conspiracy coordinated with the Chinese and George Soros at Area 51. Oh, shut the fuck up. But that's what all day has been like. Okay. And it started early. Did you all see the press conference at the House or the congressional confab, Republican confab Trump spoke at? It started early. Which leads me to the first major topic. We still have to talk about Venezuela because what a shit show. And oh my God, they're literally by the minute and the hour finding new ways to lie about it. Okay. I am going to start with a post that came in last night. I think it was when I was doing a live session last night. Charles Savage of the New York Times reports, and I'm going to read you this post verbatim. This came out at 5:43 last night. This is all about Maduro's indictment and the alleged reason we went into Venezuela, because we had to enforce the arrest warrant because it wasn't a coup. It wasn't regime change, but we're in charge. Okay, let me read you this verbatim. The Justice Department has backed off a dubious claim about Nicolas Maduro that the Trump administration promoted last year in laying the groundwork to remove him from power in Venezuela, accusing him of leading a drug cartel called Cartel de los Soles. That claim traces back to a 2020 grand jury indictment of Mr. Maduro drafted by the Justice Department. In July 2025, copying the language from it, the Treasury Department designated Cartel de los Soles as a terrorist organization. In November, Marco Rubio, Nationalist cuck number one, the Secretary of State and that wasn't in the thing. In November, Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State and President Trump's national security advisor, ordered the State Department to do the same. But experts in Latin American crime and narcotic issues have said it is actually a slang term invented by this Venezuelan media in the 1990s, 30 years ago, for officials who are corrupted by drug money. And on Saturday, after the administration captured Mr. Maduro, the Justice Department released a rewritten indictment that appeared to tactically concede the point. They made up a terrorist organization and claimed that Maduro was in charge of it. That's what basically it boils down to. There was no terrorist organization, nor even a street gang called Cartel de las Soles. It was a running joke by the local Venezuelan media. Now, Trump in the confab this morning in his live comments seemed to indicate that, well, the real problem of Maduro is he wasn't a good leader and he was a faker and he tried to copy my dance. He went into this weird fucking dance thing. It's even weirder than normal. And that seems to be the momentary reason. Because whether it's frontal lobe dementia or aphasia or whatever is going wrong with him, I'm not a doctor. I don't know what the fuck is wrong. All I'm seeing is aging disease in him. If I saw this in my elderly parents or my elderly in-laws, I'd be taking them to a doctor. It's so apparent to me. And it may be because, living and working in a town as a peace officer where you do have a lot of elderly retirees, you get to learn, whether they're grumpy, cranky, or actually in trouble because of an underlying mental health or mental decay issue. Okay, a memory issue, stuff like that. Um, so as a layperson, it just stands out to me. Not a doctor, but I've dealt with enough elderly people who were lost and confused and all that to say there is a concern here. Okay. While Trump is on stage doing his Mikado copied my dance, Machado, the Nobel Prize winner, did an interview. And remember, she's a far right winger. That's why Trump likes her. Okay. And that makes me nervous giving our American history in South America in the 50s and 60s and 70s. We only allow far right wing dictators. Pinochet would have never happened in South America if it wasn't for the American government. That's just history. Sorry if that upsets the red hat rubes, but that's history. And Pinochet was one of the most brutal dictators, a psychotic dictator. I mean, he did things to people that would make Hezbollah or Hamas uncomfortable. Pinochet was fucking evil. Okay. That was a direct product of our foreign policy. So when they say, well, they want Machado, and I learn Machado's a far right winger, that makes me nervous. She was fawning over dear leader, practically called him the walking Jesus Christ. And you add that to her forum appearance from the other day where she goes, yeah, if Trump, she didn't directly say this, but she inferred, if Trump installs me as president of Venezuela, I will literally sell off Venezuela to American corporations. Okay, this sounds like South American interventionism of the 50s, 60s, and 70s. That all went wrong. It seems like we're replaying history. Okay. And you start adding all the things that are screwed up, fucked up about this situation. Then you replay the history of South America and our involvement post World War II. This gets unnerving, especially when they're telling us we cannot have any services. We cannot have healthcare. We cannot have schools. We cannot have the arts. We cannot have medical research. We can't even allow kids to arrive in America for medical care because they're evil little terrorists that have to be put in a black site by Christy Nome. Okay. They are deconstructing America under the claims of cost, and they're literally starting a $1 trillion hemispheric war starting in Venezuela based on a list of shitty reasons. Yeah, basically she's calling, I'm looking at my notes. Basically she's looking at Trump to literally fly her down to Venezuela. And can you imagine this scenario, how ugly this would look in the international community? Because nobody's happy with us. Okay. The only people that are happy that we invaded and pulled off a coup, a crappy coup. Everybody in charge of Venezuela is a crony of Maduro. What policy did you affect? What outcome did you change in Venezuela if you literally left 75% of the criminals there that were under indictment and literally turned the country over to the person who is literally a Maduro clone? What problem did you fucking solve? And how much is this going to cost us in healthcare, schools, and services in the United States to not solve a problem in Venezuela? Because here's the big spectacular news, people. We're not going to solve shit in Venezuela. Nothing. You know what the streets are filled with today? It looks like the insurrection on January 6th, but in Venezuela, Caracas, Venezuela today. All the militia with their AK-47s and their banana clips, beating up journalists, threatening citizens because, the militias are now in charge. Okay, great coup. Great coup. And I said, you got to put everything together in a compendium because dear leader porn star Humper later was he yesterday or after the live session? I'm forgetting right now, but he did blurt out within the last 24 hours or so. He did blurt out that if the oil companies won't pay the $100 billion to get Venezuelan oil industry back online, Trump will simply hand the bill to taxpayers. And what do I mean by taxpayers? You and me. I doubt any billionaires are in this live session with me. Okay. He literally just blurted out, oh, taxpayers will just cover it. Okay. Why wouldn't the American oil companies want to go back to Venezuela? Because the oil reserves is a Maduro fantasy. The numbers are made up. Okay, you go pre-Chavez, pre-Maduro, and look at the reserve numbers versus Chavez, late Chavez, early Maduro. The numbers are completely manipulated. Okay, even if you don't use the manipulated numbers, which is about 3 times higher than what everybody said the reserves were for decades. Okay, and there's ways to figure out how much reserves they are, and they did test that. That's why the numbers were what they were when the American companies ran the infrastructure down there. Okay, but they took it over as a state-run industry, and they wanted more votes in when they sat down at the board at OPEC. How do you get voting rights in OPEC? By your count of your reserves. Venezuela didn't want to be the low dog anymore. They didn't want to be the runt of the OPEC pack. So their oil minister showed up with a PowerPoint slide that was completely fantasy. Okay. So even if you use the numbers that are more real, it all comes down to, can you extract it at a good cost factor, and can you make money doing it? Okay. Do you have the internal country security well enough in hand where you can be there without all your workers being threatened or killed? Okay. Security is a big reason where not the oil companies are. Is the oil actually recoverable in amounts? Because if what Venezuela did was just count all the heavy bitumen that is really hard to pull up out of the ground and said, oh, look, we have all the rule, and it's not sweet oil, the low sulfur, easy to extract oil, then your cost of extracting that is much higher than extracting anything else. Now, the big reason why American oil companies probably won't want to go down to Venezuela is security, total availability. What can they really extract over time without losing money? And do they want to add supply to the global market that competes against their other investments, like the investments in Norway, Canada? I mean, they have spent what, 400 billion over the last 15 years in Canada doing heavy oil in Canada, tar sands, oil sands, whatever you want to call it. You got to dilute it, you got to heat it, you got to do other things. But yeah, you can suck a bunch of energy out of the ground if you don't mind the extra processing costs and the extra extraction costs. Okay, but they went full Monte in Canada. That's where their new investments are running. So can Dear Leader literally look at Chevron, whoever, and just go back to Venezuela, rebuild it, spend $100 billion? He can't force a private company to do that. So his only thing left to do is go back to corporate socialism and corporate welfare. Force the middle class taxpayers, because billionaires don't pay any taxes, corporations don't pay any taxes. Force the payment onto the working middle class and the working poor. Have them pay for it. Now, if the market doesn't work after we spend $100 billion, it's no sweat off of fucking Chevron's balls. It didn't cost them anything. Oh, what happens when the state controls the economy, controls all the investments, and demands a certain outcome? We had a name for that in the Cold War. What the fuck was the name? Communism. That's right. It was communism. So we're going to replace a socialist in Maduro, a dictator socialist, and we're going to replace it with coup-based communism, where we hand the price tag of the debacle to anybody but the decision makers, the wealthy, and the companies who may or may not profit from this. Okay. See what I mean by the compendium? It's a problem. Every time you add a little bit more information to what they're doing, the story actually gets far worse. And you know, this is Maduro an asshole? Absolutely. He's a criminal scumbag, no doubt. But shit, a third of the world's countries, at least minimally, are run by criminal scumbags, including ours right now. This is the thing that's blowing my damn mind. You have a president that's got a 34 felony account conviction history on his record. We saw it live on TV. Okay, he's got sedition on his record. He's got defrauding the U.S. government. He's got an adjudicated civil tort naming him as a rapist. He's got an investigation that literally names him on multiple felony charges out of Jack Smith's investigation. Not to mention, why did we really go into Venezuela? The fucking Epstein files. All this shit, I'm convinced, is made up. But you got to start, like any propaganda, I know I'm repeating myself, but for anybody who's just joining me tonight, propaganda and disinformation requires a nugget of truth. Or you sound like the crazy uncle with a tinfoil hat who's had too much wine and whiskey at Thanksgiving dinner. Starts talking about Area 51. Okay. The nugget of truth is Venezuela is a fucked up country. I knew this 15, 20 years ago. I'm a veteran of several startups, and I founded a couple of startups. Hopefully, unfortunately, they weren't as successful as I wanted them to be. But when you're in a startup and you're working on small teams, we always try to hire summer interns, college kids who are looking to break into the industry because it gives them good experience. It gives us an extra set of hands. It gives us usually a good coder who's been taught all the latest, greatest stuff in Python or C to do good code. So, we hired a robotics student from a local college, and he's Venezuelan. And after I got to know him, we're out at one of our favorite taverns in the South Bay, and we struck up a conversation. I'd like, "Hey, how did you land here?" And he's going, "Do you know how bad Venezuela is?" And he goes, "It's terrible." And he goes, "It's not bad." He goes, "It's horrible. 7 days a week. It's horrible." He goes, "Yeah, there's a reason why me and a lot of my family and friends live in the United States and Canada, because Venezuela sucks." And he went down the whole list. And he goes, "Yeah, there's definitely a reason why I live here." And I'm like, "Wow, I'm glad you're here because you're a really smart kid." Great freaking coder. And built a whole compute cluster on a Raspberry Pi for a remote experimental test, which was pretty cool. He did a good job. But yeah, so years and years and years, I've known that Venezuela is a terrible thing. Chavez was a moron. Chavez was literally a communist socialist moron. Okay. He ran the country into the dirt like every other dictator has done, and I've listed them out before. Idi Amin, Saddam Hussein, Gaddafi, Ceausescu and his wife, Hoxha in Albania, the Catholic wacko with mental problems, with paranoid delusions. Okay. Pol Pot. Okay. There isn't a dictator who took their country into a more prosperous space. Okay. I know we're not down with peace and prosperity anymore, and that's heartbreaking. But when you're dealing with a dictator in the 20th century dictator playbook, it's wholly destructive. So yes, the nugget of truth is Venezuela's a shit show. The nugget of truth is both Chavez and Maduro are not just horrible people, they're quite evil. Okay. They ran their country and their economy into the ground for a string of stupid freaking reasons. And anybody who's just running running a country or a society or even a town just to ingratiate their own power, this is exactly what's going to happen. The sociopathic tendencies come out in all dictators. It all becomes about the strong man. Everybody else can suffer. Remember, Ceausescu and his wife literally starved people to death while they held banquets in their ostentatiously decorated and appointed palaces. Okay. Chavez and Maduro weren't that far off. Okay. But does that mean that Maduro was in charge of the De La Solis terrorist organization? No, because Cartel de las Solis never actually existed. And once again, I'm pretty sure this administration knew that. They just don't care. It's a means to an end, which is the worst philosophy an educated person could carry with them throughout their life. If you're using means to an end as your philosophy, you're a moral failure. Check yourself. And both sides are getting really deep in their own mythos about Venezuela. Like I saw a video where it explained how idiotic the far left can be, and someone who occasionally leans toward, I'm not going to bring up the content creator, but occasionally leans pretty hard right. The lefty, the right guy, the other guy was criticizing, was saying that the reason we invented Venezuela, invaded Venezuela, was so we could publish memes on Twitter, and that's why you saw the picture of the Twitter screen behind Hegseth. Okay. We did not invade Venezuela to create memes. That's not what we did. We invaded Venezuela because it was a great distraction to an administration completely failing in the United States of America. The economy is flagging. Epstein files, healthcare, the insurrection. Still, and I'll get into that today. It's still a problem. Okay. The fact that the administration brutally lost 2 cases involving military deployments inside the United States. The judges and the justices literally handed the administration their own head on a platter. That's why we invaded Venezuela. The same reason Bill Clinton, Bubba, fired cruise missiles into a baby food factory in Somalia. We invaded Venezuela, and Bubba blew up a baby food factory simply so they could change the evening news's A blocks. Yes, I mean that very seriously. They just wanted to change the news. What's the first, news is set up on half-hour newscast. It's A block, B block, C block. Okay, it's the sections you see, and then the commercials are in between. Okay. Done a little television and radio early in my life, interviewing and stuff like that. So have a basic understanding on how it works. They needed something, so the op-ed pages and the front pages both were not just talking about the Epstein files, not just talking about how they just bankrupted tens of millions of Americans and they don't even give a shit. How they're literally deconstructing education, art, science, and medicine in America. So what do? We use the military-industrial complex that concerned Eisenhower. We are the hammer now. Every single problem, whether they're a real problem or not. Like needing to change the A block on tonight's news is not a real problem. But every problem now is a nail. Why? Because the only tool we have is a hammer. That's why we invaded Venezuela. We can, therefore we did. And look, everybody's talking about Venezuela. Voila. But none of it's making any sense. None of it. Especially when you tell me that, oh, I briefed the oil executives before we invaded, but not Congress. That's fucked up. And then the next day, he goes, well, if the oil companies won't pay for it, even though they agreed it with me, or at least I lied to you and I told you they agreed with me to pay the $100 billion, you're going to pay the $100 billion. Not Trump, not Ellison, not Musk, not Zuckerberg. You're going to pay for it. And how you're going to pay for it? We're going to close your rural hospital. We're going to defund your public school. We're going to cancel pediatric cancer research. And remember that anytime that dear leader porn star Humper says a number, he doesn't know what that number means. And you saw that on Air Force One in the interview. Billion, trillion. Well, no, trillions. What they're doing is taking the false Maduro number, which is like 300 billion barrels, multiplying it by the current price and claiming they have trillions of dollars of revenue overnight, ready to make money. The real story is closer to 5 to 7 years of recovery, reinvestment, repair, and redevelopment. And 5 to 7 years is the minimum. More likely, you're looking at 7 to 12 years. Okay. That's if Chevron and the rest are willing to go down there. Now, why would they want to go to Venezuela just to compete against their investments in the United States and Canada that it's totally making them money? Okay. They can manage the rig counts. They can manage supplies. It ain't really bright picture for them at $65 a barrel right now, but they can still squeeze. You're not winning a lotto, like when oil's $150 a barrel, but you can squeeze out a cash flow. Okay. You're not going to be throwing a big celebration over the cash flow, but you ain't losing money either. Okay. Why would they want to open up an entire other market that's mostly based on heavy lift, sulfur high, what would they call dirty oil? Okay. The bitumen, stuff with sulfur and sand and all the other shit in it that we don't want. There's a reason why they call it Sweet Texas crude. WTI is Sweet Texas. Sweet is a moniker meaning low sulfur, basically, and low other crap in the oil. It doesn't take much to refine it. It takes a lot less processing to refine it. Therefore, the extraction is easier because it's more liquid. Okay. Heavy bitumen is more like a paste that you have to dilute and heat up and everything else to get it to lift, to get it to pump down the pipelines, everything. Okay. Texas is pretty much, from my understanding, that's dream fuel in the oil industry. You wish all the oil was like Texas sweet. Okay. Only a tiny bit of Venezuela comes close to Texas sweet. More of it is even more of a problem than the heavy oil in Canada. But then, this is where the stuff that sounds like communism to me kicks in. Well, you're just going to go in there and you're going to extract the oil anyways, because we can't have a dictator running a terrorist organization not developing their oil resources. Can you make money in Venezuela? That's the big problem. And if you don't have security in the country, you can't make money. Can they fix the security picture? That's step one. Step two, you got to have a system of governance in Venezuela that will allow proper contract. Why do you think the oil companies love Canada and Norway? Okay. The politicians don't control the system. The courts do. And the courts are very matter of fact about everything. Okay. They don't have to worry about some weird dictator confiscating their shit in Norway or Canada. They don't have to worry about some politician coming up with some crazy demand. Okay. Even pipelines, which can be problematic to develop, they eventually get it done. You want to replace all that stability in Northern Europe, in North America, with the shit show in Venezuela, and you're going to automatically make trillions of dollars, even though, like I said before, your math is totally fucked up. I mean, if there could there be a trillion over time for like talking like decades? Possibly. It all depends on, when they get down there, like how bad is the industry decay? How much is going to take to lift some of the worst fuel out of some of the deepest reservoirs? Okay, like this is a hallmark of not just dear leader port star humper, but everybody in his orbit. They're reductive. I'm going to take the littlest, simplest, oftentimes meaningless aspects of a huge problem space and a huge policy area, and we're just going to reduce it to sound bites, sometimes less than sound bites. Well, he wasn't a good leader because, he tried to dance like me. Who gives a fuck? What does that have to do with invading a country in violation of the UN Charter? And it's bad. It's bad, bad, bad. Did you see the interview, the acolyte of dear leader, Bartiromo, over on Fox Business News? Well, this was about getting rid of a dictator who was dealing drugs. I'm sure Saudi Arabia is not delivering fentanyl to America. Senator Rand Paul looks right into the camera and goes, well, neither is Venezuela, according to our security briefing. Their talking points are failing across the board. The other concerning thing is Trump has now disavowed everybody in Venezuela, whether it's Machado, the opposition, because she committed the ultimate sin. She didn't hand him her Peace Prize. So she's guilty. She's guilty of not being a sycophant of dear leader. So she's out. Now, the vice president that was just sworn in as the interim president, she's out. The rest of the cabinet, they're all under indictment by the DOJ, just like Maduro was under indictment. So there's nobody acceptable to the current American regime, the current nationalist regime of corruption, to run Venezuela. So what happens next? Pete Hegseth and Mark Rubio are the viceroys of Venezuela? To what ends? For what purpose? Marco Rubio is an oil geologist and an oil engineering and chemical engineering expert that knows how to get the oil industry back online? I doubt it. Hegseth's going to take a swig of vodka, and then he's going to pour a little vodka down the pipe to help, dilute the oil and get it back up out of the ground. Ooh, lethality, bro. Hate that guy. What a douche. Nothing, 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 nothing is adding up about Venezuela. And when this went down, I said at the very beginning, well, at least they had an indictment. At least they went to a grand jury and they had an indictment, so you could at least say he was a criminal. Well, that's not what they indicted him for. They changed the indictment for post facto reasons. So how much truth do we have? Like, again, only the smallest nugget of truth that will support the mythology, the disinformation, the propaganda on top of it. Yes, Chavez and Maduro's were jerk-offs. They ran the country into the ground. They are corrupt. Our president is corrupt. So what the fuck? Oh, Maduro was a criminal. Our president's a criminal. But you indicted him originally for being a leader of a terrorist organization that did not exist. And you simply changed the mythology till you got the result that you wanted. This is not going to end well. Okay. especially when they tell you the $100 billion is coming out of children's hospitals, schools. Oh, we're not going to repair that bridge. We're going to let it fall down. Remember when we let Arecibo, the radio telescope, fall down? Because we just didn't want to we just didn't want to spend the couple of millions of dollars to fix it. So we let a project that it Arecibo was the only radio telescope we have that can actually track near Earth asteroids accurately. We just let it die. Why? Because we had to give a tax break to a billionaire. Now we're going to end your road projects, your schools, your hospitals, your arts, everything. So we can pay oil companies to go into Venezuela. Why did we go to Venezuela? Lie A, lie B, lie C, lie D, lie E, lie E, and F. And tomorrow they're going to continue with a different set of lies because they keep fucking changing day to day. Like Marco Rubio cannot get his fucking shit together one interview to the next to a press release. Blah, blah, blah. What did I say yesterday? Well, here's the news story. It's ridiculous. Again, this is why we need to vote. We need a Congress that's going to change the War Power Act to stop shit like this. The work of getting Trump is just out of office is just the first step. We're going to need a whole cleanup period like post-Nixon again. Okay, I'm going to leave January 6th, the anniversary, till last, because that's going to be a hard one for me to talk about. The hell did I write down here? Speaking of Venezuela, this is a good segue into Greenland. Now remember, there's a whole set of dominoes they've identified. Venezuela, Cuba, Greenland, Mexico, Panama, Colombia, Canada. They don't pay any taxes. They want a half a dozen countries to be invaded at your expense, at your community's expense, including Greenland, which is a lawful territory of a NATO ally. And I don't think many lay people and many civilians understand how close of an ally they are. Okay. Greenland belongs to Denmark. Okay. This would be like Italy going to us, give us Guam. How about going and fucking yourself? We're not giving you Guam. Guam's a territory of the United States of America. So is Puerto Rico. So is the Virgin Islands. So are the Marshall Islands. Okay. Now, what happens if we are actually now? Adam Kinsinger said the other day something I don't necessarily agree with. He thinks they're bolstering. They're bullshit for attention. I don't think so. I literally think they mean this shit because they've already shown consequences are not a problem for them. Creating yet another shit show, that's fine. It plays into the distraction. As long as you're not talking about dear leader porn star Humper's crimes, torts, and unethical behavior, and it's a moral persona he presents, that's a win for them. Okay. Cuba is going to fall in the next couple of weeks to the next couple of months. I'll bet money on it. Think about going to Polymarket or irishbookie.com on my Tails anonymous computer and making a bet. Cuba's gone. Just deal with that fact. It's already over. They will just be pushed aside and occupied in very, very short order. Okay. If Cuba happens the way I think it's going to happen, Greenland is next. If we go into Greenland, now everybody in Europe's freaking out, including right-winger Meloni out of Italy. She's just as pissed as Olaf in Germany or Norway or Sweden or Finland. They're very upset. Denmark is fit to be tied. You are about to declare war against another NATO ally. Okay. Now, the xenophobic idiots the Red Hat rubes, the insurrectionist supporters, they're xenophobic, so now they believe everybody's our enemy, when that's not true at all. Okay. I told you, Colombia is on the list in South America. Colombia is the Germany, as far as allies go, is the Germany of South America. We're about to attack them, or at least they're on the ideological list of places to be overthrown because they won't do the bidding of dear leader Pornstar Harper. Okay. If we go after Greenland, it will be the end of NATO. If we go after Greenland, the markets in Europe will fall anywhere from 1 to 3 to as possibly high as 5%. They will go into a recession. Okay. You will destabilize all of Eastern Europe, which is the point, by the way. I literally think in the Helsinki meeting where Trump kicked out everybody and met with Putin alone, this is the deal they made. Putin gets Europe and the Caucasus region. Trump gets this hemisphere. Z gets Asia and the Pacific. They break it down in thirds. In fact, a friend of mine, a long-term friend, we've known each other for oh man, 40 years. He just texted me out of the blue the other day and he goes, "Damn it, dude, you called this a year ago. They're going to break up the world into 3 pieces." I was like, "Well, thank you. It was a good prediction." I know. This whole xenophobia trait of the nationalists is disturbing because they're blaming everybody for doing what we asked them to do post World War II. And picking a fight with Canada is a direct threat to the security of the United States of America. Who watches the Arctic Circle for us? Canada, including the early warning system in the event of an ICBM attack from Russia. That's not us watching us. That's Canada. Who's watching the northern Russian ports for us? Sweden. And they've done so since the 1950s. Anything Fort Huachuca's got for radio and crypto gear, Sweden has. We give it to them. Okay? Only a few countries have that level of access to our technology. Sweden is one of them. Why? Because they do a very important job for us. Okay? Intelligence. Denmark, Italy, Spain. Always, historically, have freely given us information that they know about they think we may not know or fully may not completely understand the circumstances. And in fact, and I know this from experience with the CID agents I worked with on a couple of missions in Europe, when Italian intelligence says something to you, sit down and listen and take notes. They probably know something you don't. And all the countries I'm messaging are friends of our mentioning are friends of ours. They're allies. Okay. They're allies that possess some of our most advanced technology. Like many civilians don't realize. Do you realize that the Canadian Signal Corps works in U.S. bases and on U.S. boats, ships, and boomers? Their senior NCOs and their warrant officers are sitting at the next chair. Same way the Polizei and the Fieldjäger worked with us in West Germany. We're literally all sitting at the same table, working the same op. These are not our enemies, people. And any claim that they are harming the United States is so farcical, so dangerous, and so stupid. I have to really find my center. Remember the teachings of O Sensei. Find your center. Stay calm because, yeah, this shit's frustrating. Okay. The RCMP, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, is a direct police and intelligence ally of the United States of America. I know that for a fact. So you take Greenland, you completely destabilize Europe. which may be part of the plan out of the Helsinki meeting. But you also affect Canada, the United States, and Mexico. As soon as we attack Greenland, any trading relationships North America had with Europe just got thrown in the trash. We're talking an economic disruption that will be brutal. Brutal in Europe. A lot worse for some countries, like Germany's in trouble. We invade Greenland and we disrupt trade between us and Germany. Germany's relying on our natural gas right now because they cannot get fuel from Russia. Why? Because we sanctioned it. What's Germany's industrial economy based on? Ethylene. Where do you get that? Natural gas. Okay. We hit Greenland for anything other than a barbecue and shaking the hands of the locals because it is home ruled. Actually, it's independent rule now. It was home rule, and now it's more autonomous rule. It's still a territory of Denmark, but with few exceptions, home rule, exclusive rule is the way it's run right now. And it's not like it's not an asset of America already. We have stuff there. We have an air base there. We have other things there. Other classified things. Greenland is not our enemy. Greenland is a working partnership with the local Greenland people, the local Greenland government, the state and territories of Denmark and the Crown of Denmark, and the United States. It's a big partnership. They want to burn it to the ground, just like they want to burn Venezuela or Ukraine to the ground, simply so they can exploit it. I was thinking about this and what I was going to say today. I was thinking like, wow, I'm kind of sounding like one of those, anti-interventionist leftists. Yeah, but I have more details. I am not anti-war. I'm anti-foolish intervention. I'm not a pacifist. Well, I am a pacifist because I was a student of Aikido for so many years. I'm just a pacifist until you throw a punch at me, and then I'm going to kick your ass. I don't go looking for fights. I will end one, though. So going into Greenland, most people don't realize the damage it would do, and most of that damage would be semi-permanent. Forget if you're an American business that does business with Germany or France or Italy or the Nordic countries, those days are over if we go to Greenland in use force. And it is a talking point. I have seen in the last 24 hours at least 15 different clips of podcasts, right-wing influencers, Fox News, Newsmax, where this is a real thing in their head. Just like Venezuela, they don't know how to use and exploit their resources, so we're going to do it. By what right? It's one of the faults of the Venezuelan, but Maduro's a criminal. So is Bibi Netanyahu, and so is Vladimir Putin. You don't seeing it. You're not invading Russia, and you're not invading Israel, are you? Oh, you invited Bibi Netanyahu to a holiday party at Mar-a-Lago. You didn't arrest him. You laid out the red carpet for Vladimir Putin. You did not arrest him. So again, your whole story seems to fall apart. They're taking the exact Putin's take on Ukraine is Trump's take on Venezuela, is the right-wing influencer podcast news sphere's take on Greenland. You getting it? These aren't separate issues. These are dots that have already been connected. Let's talk about the hard topic. As you know, I'm a retired cop, former sergeant in the military police investigations, and attached twice for two different drug war missions with CID, including I was on a DEA task force for about a year and a half. I fought the drug war on two continents, so there's no way I can't say I wasn't a cop. It's the anniversary of January 6th. January 6th, which has just been reconfirmed by Jack Smith's congressional testimony. I'm still going through the 8.5 hours of video deposition. Um, January 6th was a criminal enterprise formulated, run, and executed by the sitting president of the United States. They committed felonies of defrauding the government, sedition, and various other crimes, including aggravated assault with a weapon against a peace officer. And it is sedition, not treason. Please don't make that mistake. Treason involves a foreign entity. The insurrection had nothing to do with Russia per se. The Russian influencers definitely, made social media noise supporting it and propagandizing it, sure, just like North Korea and China did. Okay. But it did not involve foreign actors in its execution. So it's a sedition. It is U.S. people levying war against the United States of America. And that's what happened on January 6th, 5 years ago. The sitting president of the United States levied war against the government and the people of the United States of America. And they were willing to kill cops and politicians to do it. Today, I went to whitehouse.gov. Where the White House rewrote the entire history. This is directly, they literally watched the Jack Smith, because a lot of the things they changed in the story is exactly what I've already seen Jack Smith clarify in his testimony. Okay, whatever Jack Smith said was their culpability and their liability in these incidents, in this conspiracy, this criminal felonious conspiracy. They rewrote and published revisionist history on whitehouse.gov, where they essentially blamed the Capitol Police and the FBI and cops in general for the insurrection, for the act of sedition. Even though people were criminally convicted of sedition, a U.S. citizen levying war against the country. People were convicted of that. People were sentenced to more than 20 years for it. According to whitehouse.gov today, the group that is responsible for the Capitol insurrection, riot, assaults, felonious assaults, aggravated assaults with weapons, was the cops. I'm upset. There is no thin blue line. I've already explained that to you guys before. There is no support the police. The only people who love cops are our spouses and groupies. That's the reality. Even the politicians who stand there and tell you, oh, I totally support the police department and the sheriff part. No, you don't. When I show up to your house and you just punched your wife in the face and she's bleeding from the nose and the lip, and I told you to turn your hands, put your hands behind your back, you're under arrest for 273.5 of the criminal code, felony domestic abuse. You don't like me. You don't support the police. Trust me. They've told me so. When I arrest a businessman for his third DUI and it can be a felony, and he's going to get a minimum of 180 days in county jail, he doesn't support the police. He doesn't believe in the thin blue line. In fact, that guy had some choice words for me in the car after I put him in and drove him to the station for the breathalyzer. Dude, it's not my fault. This is your third DUI. Oh, by the way, he blew a 2-4, triple 11. So remember how this whole thing story arced? Right after the riot, where we all watched Trump say we're going down the Capitol and we're not going to be weak and all this strongman talk, which now he's claiming is free speech. A criminal conspiracy to defrauding the government is free speech. That's his defense, which Jack Smith totally shot down. Okay, they start off saying it was Antifa, their boogeyman, their ghost in the closet. Then they said it was peaceful protesters. Then they said they were tricked by the FBI. The FBI started the violence in the crowd. They were there and they got duped. 5 years to today, to this very date, the militia and the Proud Boys and the dickhead leaders are marching in Washington, D.C. to celebrate January 6th. The exact Proud Babies, they said we're not there on January 6th, march today celebrating January 6th. I'm sorry, this one really bugs me. The government website right now, the White House website is Goebbels' wet dream. It is propaganda taken to such a level. Even for me, it's shocking. This was adjudicated by not a judge, by dozens of judges in different cases against 1,500 suspects. About a half a dozen of them were convicted of the worst crimes. About 50 of them were convicted for doing serious bodily injury to people. We had a guy convicted of staging a QRF, a quick reaction force, across the Potomac River at a Holiday Inn, or Ramada Inn, I forget what it was. It was one of the mid-budget hotels. They're on a budget. They were traveling from the Midwest. They had long guns and carbines. Their plan was to cross the river in case the Capitol Police defended themselves, and they were going to be the QRF force that walked into Congress and executed everybody to take the Capitol. He was convicted of that. But then go look at what's on the website right now at whitehouse.com. I don't want to see the country go down. I don't want to see America fail. But goddamn, keeping any sense of patriotism alive is hard right now. My godfather was a frontline troop in Korea. My uncle Woody fought in World War II. All my uncles were Marines or Army. Uh, 5 out of 6 of us core group of friends in high school, we all joined the military and served. Marines, Air Force, Army. During the Cold War, we thought we were doing something better. We thought we were making a difference. Then I wake up decades later, and we have people that have literally been convinced through propaganda and disinformation that that the United States is their enemy, and it's the worst thing that's ever happened in the world. Even though you have right wingers on YouTube who decide to immigrate to Russia, the true free land of planet Earth. And then they get there and they realize that they can go to prison for 6 months by simply leaving their city and trying to drive to another one without an internal passport and permission from the Russian government, specifically the SVR. That Americans who do end up in Russia are usually given slave labor type jobs. Unless you're like a propaganda tool like Ed Snowden. Then they just have them sit in an apartment and make videos. No. Why the insurrection happened? Because some very wealthy, very educated men who literally have the country and most of the world at their feet convinced a lot of men that aren't as well advantaged of a bunch of malicious bullshit. They started it because they wanted political power. And remember that look at the advantages. I mean, how many of the insurrectionists went to Wharton Business School, one of the most elite business schools on planet Earth? Dear leader went to Wharton. Josh Hawley, remember him, Mr. Fist Pump, to the neo Nazis, to the Proud Babies, to the seditious dickheads. He didn't go to a Ivy League school. He went to multiple Ivy League schools and one of the best prep schools in the country when he was a kid. Tucker Carlson, wealthy AF, highly educated at very elite schools. Now, he's even worse today. I was doing some research on him the other day. That may be a whole separate video because he's really gone to 5150 school. Yeah, he is now a master manipulator and a danger to anybody that listens to him. Okay, but wind back the clock. He was part of the problem. People got duped by a wealthy criminal ring that was seeking political power, and they knew every button to push. Why? Because they had the most giant database in the world that told them what pushes your buttons. That was Facebook. Facebook was the data engineering source to set up the propaganda that led to a lot of bad things, up to and including the insurrection. Remember Cambridge Analytica? Wrote a whole essay about that. That was Steve Bannon's job on Facebook. They knew every post that pissed you off. They knew every lie you were willing to believe. Why? Because Zuckerberg created an environment and amplified an environment of disgust, disdain, fear, and hate. The angrier the posts make you, the more it will be presented to you on Facebook. That's the point of Facebook, to piss you off. So Cambridge Analytica got open access to every user on Facebook. And they monitored you. They monitored Larry, Daryl, and his other brother, Daryl. They knew that they could easily be duped into believing George Soros was the cause of all of our problems, when he's the cause of virtually none of our problems. They can convince you that people who are not even liberal, like Hillary Clinton. I always laugh. I give a hearty laugh every time I'm sitting in a bar and somebody tries to convince me that Hillary Clinton is a liberal. Ha! She never has been one. Okay. But they convinced you on Facebook that Hillary Clinton was a communist. They convinced you climate change is not happening, even though there's a 25-year study that conclusively shows it's happening and why it's happening. And the two main gases that are causing the effect, the greenhouse gas effect, carbon dioxide and methane. So they went issue by issue, personality by personality, persona by persona, and they literally harvested all the angst. And then they just fed it back to them at full volume, at full speed. And as soon as any of the content moderation kicked in at Facebook, which as soon as Trump won, they all threw out anyways. But once the content moderation kicked in, they just went and had somebody kick up a new social media site and tell, oh, Facebook is now owned by George Soros. You got to come to Gab. And Gab is just heroin, political heroin for a political heroin addict. That's all True Social is. I got a tab open right here. It is the worst form of opiate on the human mind. True Social. It's terrible. So they know what they did. They know the history of what they did. So what did they do today? They wrote a fantasy novel, The United States of Narnia, and they told you complete lies and a revisionist history and told you Capitol Police, the FBI, and Nancy Pelosi were the cause of the insurrection and its result. Okay, I'll admit, yeah, she's from our state, Nancy Pelosi. I don't like her. Okay. But I can tell you right now, because I understand civics and I read enough. And when I'm not sure, I go look things up instead of making shit up out of my ass. Whether the Speaker of the House was John Boehner, Tip O'Neill, or Nancy Pelosi, no Speaker of the House ever in its history has been responsible for the security of the Capitol. What does the website say today? The reason why there wasn't enough cops and the National Guard didn't respond and the state troopers from the nearby states didn't respond because it was all Nancy Pelosi's fault because she was in charge of security. That is an abject lie. See, I can hold two thoughts in my head. I do not like Nancy Pelosi as a politician. They're lying about Nancy Pelosi being in charge of Capitol security. See, I can do both things because I have quite a high IQ. Okay, I can even tie my shoes and chew bubblegum at the same time, which I don't think a lot of the nationalists can. Okay, let me tell you a little bit about civics, one of my favorite topics because I love reading about it. Who is actually in charge of the security of the Capitol in Washington, D.C.? 3 people. None of those 3 people is Nancy Pelosi or any Speaker of the House. It is the Sergeant at Arms of the Senate, the Sergeant at Arms of the House, and the architect of the Capitol. The Speaker of the House doesn't even have a seat on the committee that runs the policies and decides the regulations for the security of the Capitol. The Speaker of the House is not in the chain of command for the Sergeant at Arms. The Sergeant at Arms is a separate thing. Sergeants at Arms, there's 2 of them, one for the House, one for the Senate. Okay. Sergeant at Arms, Sergeants at Arms, architect of the Capitol. They're the ones that are responsible, along with the Capitol Police Chief, are they responsible for the policy down to the day-to-day of the security of the Capitol. So what's printed about Nancy Pelosi on the government website right now? She should sue in federal court and sue these people personally as well as government officials. You know this is a lie. And it's meant to defame Nancy Pelosi. And far more than just a political debate or political smear type of way. They're literally trying to pass off criminal culpability to somebody that was not involved the way they said they're involved and could not be, because that's not her job, that's not her role, that's not what the Speaker of the House does. Remember the morning after January 6th, January 7th, the morning? Yeah, I was horrified. Couldn't really sleep. Woke up early. Just following through the news. Ended up on MSNBC, and Mika and Joe were on. And Joe is having a fucking meltdown. I mean, he's not fit to be tied. He's gone Hulk. Ropes can no longer contain him. Remember his rant. If this was a black crowd or a Muslim crowd, they would have all been shot dead on sight. That is true. At least on the insurrection, and not worrying about the cops using force against you. It was like, it's like none of the Capitol Police ever worked at county fair. Because you want to see a real fight, a real riot? Wait for something to go wrong at a county fair. Holy shit. We had one year, the transformer burned out. So the whole stadium for the Barn Stadium was out, and they had a concert scheduled. There was like, shit, 4,000 people waiting to see the show. Took PG&E, oh shit, 2 hours to fix the problem, but the bar stayed open. People started yelling, shots! Then the tussle started in the middle of the crowd on the floor. Turned into a full-blown frickin' riot. We had to go in there with Boken sticks and helmets. Some of these guys were so drunk, they went down fighting. I mean, like a dozen of them got charged with assaulting peace officers because they didn't care who they were hitting. They were just in a full-blown riot mode. Okay. Man, if we can walk into a county fair and whip fucking ass when necessary, what the fucking wrong was with the Capitol Police that day? And what the hell was wrong with the I mean, this is the same thing with like Uvalde. Why weren't people held? Why wasn't the leadership at Uvalde held criminally responsible for cowardice in the face of the enemy? Why wasn't anybody in the Capitol Police management, from the chief to the captains, why were none of them held for public misconduct, for not preparing for what everybody knew was going to happen? Now, my wife's a smart gal. She's got a master's degree. She speaks multiple languages. Pretty smart gal. Okay. She's not a cop. She's not intelligence agents. No experience in the military or paramilitary. She asked me on January 5th before it happened, how bad is tomorrow going to be? I was like, what are you thinking? And she goes, they seem to be planning a riot, if not an attack. And I'm going, yes, that's exactly what's going to happen. I hope to hell they're prepared. They were not. Who was held accountable? Oh, that's right. We blame Nancy Pelosi that had no duty or no responsibility for the policing of the security of the site. That's right. Then we blame the FBI. We claim the FBI was the ones that told the rioters to attack the police officers. Now, were there FBI agents in the crowd? There most certainly were. Because I'm at least somebody in the FBI wasn't a complete moron and realized what my non-cop wife realized. Something is about to happen here. And if something goes down, we better have intelligence to what goes down. Okay? Because remember, it was all over social media. Because I remember, like, the 4th and the 5th, my wife and I showing each other our computers, our laptops, and going, are you reading this? Yeah, I'm seeing this on this site. I'm seeing this on this site. And people are going nuts. Like, this is the fight they always wanted. World War II didn't mean anything. This January 6th that turned into erection, this is the fight they always wanted. We were seeing it days before. So I hope the hell the FBI had undercover agents there. Because yes, we do infiltrate protests. Duh. You don't think anarchists infiltrate your protests? You could be the most peaceful lefty, peacenik on planet Earth. You're king peace of the peaceful people. You think you can control the anarchists when they show up? And they do show up. We had for years and years on the West Coast, just like the right wingers get paid today. We had anarchists that were being paid to show up at protests on the West Coast. Not a suspicion. We knew this for a fact. So why the fuck do you think we're standing in the crowd in civilian clothing? We're looking for the people who are going to be the disruptors, the people who are going to start the violence. Are we trying to stop the protest or impinge the free speech of the protest leaders? No. You get to fucking say anything you want to do. Just don't start a fucking riot. See? That's the one rule. Don't start a fucking riot. That's what I was talking about before, about like the anti-abortion protest I had at police back in the day. 4,000 people sitting on the road next to the beach, all holding up their signs, right? And I don't agree with anything they're fucking saying. Okay? Now, if you want to stand, a couple of feet away from each other and scream at each other, you're wrong, fuck you. I don't care. Just don't start a fight. You start a fight, you're both going. Okay? You start a couple of fights, you have a history of starting fights, you can be charged with criminal route, trying to prepare for a riot. That's route. Okay. So yes, of course the FBI was there. Did they instigate the attack on the police? That's fucking absurd. That's absurd based on the evidence in the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of trials we had. The allocutions we had when they pled guilty. It isn't a mystery who thought up the riot insurrection, the whole disaster, the sedition, the levying war against America. It's not a mystery who fucking did it. The facts are in evidence, and it's not fucking George Soros. It's Donald J. Trump. But I do suggest you go to the website, and it's even called revisionist history. They blame the media, the media, and the Democrats for revisionist history, while they completely make up and go against all evidence on the record. Okay, coming up on an hour and a half, so let's wrap up. Um, we know our only possible solution to Greenland, Venezuela, sedition, corruption. We know what the answer is. It's the only answer we got. It's voting. I do think we have we have a chance at a second solution, because it has worked in the new democracies in Europe, and it definitely works in South Korea. Is we could go on general strike, but I don't see America doing that. You do something really stupid in the parliament of South Korea, they strike, and they don't give a shit about striking. They will happily go without to make sure something bad doesn't happen. Same thing in the new democracies in Eastern Europe. One country wanted to tax their internet, even though their constitution says you can't do that. They took over every bridge in every city for a week. Yeah, sure. I'm not getting paid this week. I'm going to suffer. Okay. But I'm also not going to live in a fucking corrupt oligarch based shit show either. We already had that with communism. Why do we want that again in the 2000s? So they took to the streets. They walked off the job. Because I just don't see the coordination. Because we would need the dock workers and the truckers to stop working at the same time. Then we need the trades to walk, like the wildcat strikes of the 70s. We need the electrical workers to walk, the plumbers, the carpenters, the HVAC guys, but they need to walk at the same time the longshoremen walk. But unfortunately, a lot of the trades, you get a lot of right wing personas. You get a lot of right wing influencers that affect them. Everybody from Joe Rogan to Ben Shapiro to that asshole Tim Pool to the idiot Joe Rogan. Hope says women planning a strike on 1/20/26. Okay, I have to look that up. I don't know what that's about, but I'll look that up. Um, I hope it's not a sex strike. Because they did that in Italy one year. The women went on strike, and they wouldn't give sex to anybody because they were pissed off about a legislation bill. And oh yeah, it got dicey. Actually, a general strike. Okay, all right. I'll look it up. I don't. I can't speak to it because I didn't know about it until you posted there. I'll look it up, but I'm not sure. But um, if it's a general strike, I hope they understand what a general strike actually. I know you're safe. Well, thank you. Oh, you did that laugh today. Um, I just hope that when if it is something's brewing, I just hope people understand what a real general strike entails, and what it's going to take to pull it off. Because in other countries, when they walk, holy shit, they walk. And actually been proud of the children lately. I've seen high schools walk. I've seen a couple of college campuses walk. But again, for it to be an actual general strike, you all gotta walk at the same time, and you gotta hurt the money, your money and their money. Okay, because the perfect general strike goes down like this: the dock workers get pissed, longshoremen wildcat, they walk, no authorization, they just fucking walk. The truckers call solidarity, and even the independents. Okay, and a lot of the independents are black women, Sikhs. A lot of minorities are in independent trucking today. They just go, you know what? We ain't doing anything right. I feel what the longshoremen are saying. the independent truckers pull over on 80 to the, like in Utah where you can see the canyon and stuff. They just park their trucks, open up the back, pull out the barbecue, crack open a beer, and go, okay, when the longshoremen get back to work, we get back to work. And then the universities walk. Then the high schools walk. Then the job sites walk. Okay. Happened all the time in the 70s. They were wild. Wildcat strikes in the 70s were crazy. And they were infectious. Okay. We need that again. They look at their phones at the morning coffee break on the job site, and the electricians call over the plumbers and the steam fitters and the carpenters. They go, "Hey, dudes, it's happening." They get on the phone and they go, "We don't care what the union boss says. We're walking." Hell, they did a wildcat strike in the 70s over Iran, taking the hostages, and the government not doing enough to get our people back. That caused some sporadic wildcat strikes, not full general strikes, but some wildcatting activity short. Okay. So, general strike's a possibility, but, it's a low order possibility. I would completely support it because anything to stop the madness now that isn't violent, I'm all for. Because if violence starts at scale in this country, kiss the economy goodbye overnight. The markets crash. Equity gets pulled so fast, capital gets pulled so fast, it will be horrifying. I mean, we're talking about a nightmare on Wall Street. 51 5051 organization, 50501 organization. We better do it now, or we'll be like Russia soon. Oh yeah, that's kind of true. Uh, wow, wow. I'm gonna look at. I hope I will look up into that. Definitely will. Because that's my fear. My fear is legitimately. I'm not throwing rocks. I'm legitimately scared that we're going to turn into a gangster communist society. They all talk about how collectivism is bad, yet they're demanding fealty and collectivism as policy and culture in society. I mean, look at the Trump Kennedy Center. If that isn't practicing fucking a takeover of the arts, and the way they've hijacked Christianity in this country as a far right thing. I mean, look at the Russian Orthodox Church. It's state ideology now. American right wingers are joining the Russian Orthodox Church because they think evangelicals now are pussies. And they're saying it on TikTok. Okay, general strike, possibility of low order. Okay. What's our real solution here? Voting. But it can't be voting for shitty candidates. It can't be voting for the empty suits. You have to tell me the fucking solution to the problem. Okay. Because we're up in you're working at a nuclear power plant and they detect something wrong and the emergency red lights start flashing. Okay. Or like when I worked at the National Lab, when they start up the accelerator, the doors won't close for 15 minutes in case somebody's in there, they can get the hell out. And red and yellow flashers are through the entire tunnel. So you cannot miss. And every 3 minutes, bah, the warning siren goes off to tell you we're about to energize a nuclear railgun. Get the fuck out of the tunnel. Okay. The economy is signaling that right now. It's signaling danger. If you don't do something and you don't do it now, you're going to get hurt. You need to evacuate to a safe zone. That's what I'm saying. Yellen said this in an economic conference. We just hit $37 trillion, and behind the curtains, everybody is freaking out. Capital is freaking out. Equity is freaking out. Insurance, bonds, fund managers, regulators, Fed chairmen, they're all signaling, whoop, something wrong, something wrong, something wrong, something wrong. We need people who are going to seriously deal with the problems at hand and deal with the biggest problems we've got. If we don't turn the ship, we're going to hit the iceberg. The ship's going to go down. That's what I'm telling you. Vote. Understand your candidate. Understand a couple of good issues at more than a Facebook or TikTok level. Okay. Even if you're struggling now financially and you can't afford a bunch of subscriptions to outlets and stuff like that, there's enough freely information available on the big topics we're facing. Okay. And the smart people, not the replay garbage or the influencers on YouTube, but there's a lot of subject matter experts that are on YouTube and then are here on Substack. Listen to them. Okay. Find the candidates that are really, really willing to buck sort of the traditional ideology of the country and take us onto a new course and take us onto a new course fast. Okay. Because if they're freaking out about $37 trillion in debt and these dickheads just announced a hemispheric war because we need to profiteer off another country's natural resources, this is colonialism on steroids. Okay. This is exactly what left-wing activists complain about. And in this case, they're absolutely fucking right. This sounds like socialism, communism with an R, Republican. That's insane. Do none of you motherfuckers remember who Barry Goldwater was? Who Eisenhower was? What the hell? Be independent. Vote independent. Run for local office independent. Know your candidates. Activate your circle of friends and family. Not voting is not an option. A 42% turnout like in 2022 is not an option. It's the end of the country. Unless you want to be a Muscovite, get out and vote. Unless you want to have a passport to cross a state line, like gangster commie Russia, vote. If you don't want us to see to end NATO and get into wars with our allies, Denmark is our ally. Canada is our ally. Colombia is our ally. Panama, kind of friendly. We have a good relationship. Wouldn't call them too tight, but definitely not an enemy. They want to go to war with all these people. How do we avoid that? Vote. And until next time, please, 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 um, think about it. And if you like the video or you like a short, please restack me, share me on YouTube, whatever. Um, we need to start communicating. We need to argue and document against the falsehoods. At the same time, we need to educate ourselves on what's the path forward. Okay. Stay strong. Remember to breathe. And I'll talk to you soon. Have a good night.